All right, let's talk about this. You've seen those before and after ads a million times, right? And you've probably had that little voice in your head ask, yeah, but did that really work? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the science of proof. We're getting right under the hood of a real research study to see how scientists can actually say, with confidence, that something they did truly caused a change. It sounds like such a simple question, doesn't it? But the answer, it's kind of tricky. See, it's not enough just to see a difference between the before and the after. You have to prove that your program, and not a million other random things, is what's responsible for that change. And that right there is the huge challenge that researchers tackle every single day.
So, to get our heads around this, we're not just going to talk about abstract theories. Nope, we are diving headfirst into a real-world case, a study from 2013 that set out to see if they could get high school students to be more physically active.
The goal here was super clear and, honestly, really important. I mean, we all know exercise is good for us, but how do you effectively teach that to teenagers in a way that, actually sticks? That's the million-dollar question. So these researchers set up an experiment to try and find out. The way they set it up was a pretty classic scientific approach. You have one group that gets the special treatment, the educational program. That's our experimental group. And then you have another group that gets nothing new. That's our control group. Now, comparing these two is absolutely crucial, but the real magic, the secret sauce, is in that last step. They measured them not just once, but over time. And that brings us right to the heart of the puzzle. Look, comparing Group A to Group B at a single moment, that's one thing. But tracking how the very same people in Group A change from one month to the next, that is a whole different ballgame. This is the critical question for their method. You're not just taking a single snapshot in time. What you're really trying to do is capture a whole movie of how these students are developing. And to do that, you need a very special kind of statistical tool, one that's specifically designed to compare people to their past selves. It's all about those repeated measurements. So here's what the researchers did. They set up 3 key checkpoints. First, a pretest to get a baseline, right? This shows where everyone was starting from before anything happened. Then, a post-test right after the program finished to see the immediate impact. And finally, and this is so important, they did one last check-in a month later to see if the changes actually lasted. Okay, so just think about this for a second. You've got data from 3 different time points for 2 different groups, and you're tracking every single person individually. How in the world do you make sense of all that? Well, you can't just use any old statistical test. You need the perfect tool for this specific job. And that tool, my friends, is the hero of our story today. It's called a repeated measures ANOVA, or just ANOVA for short. The best way to think about it is like a high-powered specialized microscope. It's built for exactly this kind of before, during, and after analysis, letting you zoom in on the patterns of change within the same individuals over time. So what makes this tool so great? Why is it so perfect for this? Here's the cool part. Instead of just comparing the average of the whole group, it looks at each student individually. It compares John's score at the end to John's score at the beginning. This is huge because it filters out all that background noise from people just being different. Some students might have known more about health to begin with. This method cuts through that, giving you a much clearer signal of the program's true impact. All right, so the researchers had their experiment and their specialized tool was ready to go. So, what happened? What did they actually find when they crunched the numbers? Let's take a look. And bam! The results were crystal clear. The students who actually got the educational program showed a real measurable increase in their knowledge about physical activity and a much better attitude towards it. And the control group? Well, they pretty much stayed the same. This is our first huge piece of evidence that the program was actually working. Now let's zoom in on this table. See that p-value? All that really means is, what are the odds this result is just a random fluke? For the control group, the chances are kind of high, around 13%. But look at the experimental group. That p-value is less than 0.001. That means there's less than a 1 in 1,000 chance that this big jump in knowledge was just a coincidence. The tool is basically screaming at us, hey, pay attention, this is a real effect. But then, something fascinating happened. When the researchers looked at actual behavior, how much the students were exercising, both groups got more active, the experimental group and the control group. It seems like just being part of a study, having to fill out questionnaires about exercise, made everyone more aware of it. And this is a perfect example of why a control group is absolutely essential. Without it, you might have thought your program was a smash hit for changing behavior when really something else was at play.
And that surprising twist brings us to our final and most crucial point. What does this all mean? Why did we just walk through all this detail? It's because the method, how you actually do the science, is the foundation for everything. It's the bedrock of any real discovery.
Think about it. Without a precise tool like ANOVA, the researchers could have easily gotten the wrong story. They might have just seen that everyone got more active and concluded, well, I guess the program didn't do anything for behavior. But because they used the right method, they could see the nuance. They proved the program did work to change knowledge and attitudes, and that is a critical first step. So, what are the big things you should take away from all this? First, for any before and after claim, know that there are powerful tools like ANOVA that are the gold standard for finding real proof. Second, a scientific finding is only as strong as the methods used to get it. And finally, the next time you read about a new study, don't just look at the headline. Get curious about how they figured it out. The how is often the most important part of the story.
And that leaves us with one last question for you. You now have a key piece of the researcher's toolkit in your own mind. So, thinking with this new lens, what before and after questions are you most curious about? If you had these tools, what changes out there in the world would you want to go and measure? It really makes you think, doesn't it? Thanks for diving in with us today.